My name is Danielle. I was 26 when I lost my baby, and my parents chose not to show up. It was 4:17 a.m. when the pain sharpened. I thought it was cramping. I'd had that before. But this time, I couldn't stand. I crawled to my phone, blood soaking through my shorts, and called 911, whispering, "Please hurry," because I didn't want the neighbors to hear. At the hospital, they moved fast. Cold gel, monitors, whispers behind a blue curtain. A young nurse gently touched my shoulder. "I'm sorry," she said. "It didn't hit me then. Not really." I texted my mom, "ER, baby's gone, alone. Can you come?" The response came 45 minutes later. "Sweetheart, we're in the middle of something. We'll check in later. Be strong." That something was a baby shower. For Josh, my ex, for his new girlfriend, Crystal. I found out the same way everyone did, through photos. My sister Lauren posted them first, balloons, cake, and then I saw my parents. My dad cradling a gift bag that said, "Welcome, baby girl," and my mom laughing in the background, her hand on Crystal's belly. I stared at the screen until the nurse took my phone away. "Let's get you cleaned up," she said. There was no one in the waiting room, no flowers, no questions, no missed calls. When they wheeled me back from the procedure, I noticed my emergency contact form, my mother's name, still had the no answer box checked. I tried to tell myself they didn't know how bad it was. Then I opened Instagram again. "Grateful to be surrounded by family today," Crystal had captioned a photo. My mother had commented with 4 pink hearts. My father had written, "You're going to be a wonderful mom. We're all so proud of you." I turned my face to the wall and felt something inside me dissolve. Not just the child I'd carried, something deeper. The nurse came in to check my IV. "Any family coming later?" I shook my head. "They're busy." She paused. "Do you want me to call anyone?" No, I didn't, because if they had wanted to be here, they would have been. I unlocked the front door with the same hand that still had the hospital wristband. My legs ached from the cab ride. My body was stiff, drugged, hollow, but nothing prepared me for what I saw. The nursery door was open, wide. When I left 2 days ago, it had been exactly how I left it. Paint samples taped to the wall, baby books on the floor, the crib half-assembled with the Allen key still tucked into the corner bracket. Now the room was spotless. Not just clean, cleared. The walls were bare. No samples, no mobile, no rocker. The small giraffe lamp I'd bought from that vintage boutique on King Street? Gone. And in the center of the empty crib sat a single folded sheet of paper, taped to the rail like a reminder. I pulled it off with shaking fingers. "We didn't want you coming home to chaos. You need peace right now, not clutter. We'll talk soon. Love, Mom." No signature, no warmth, just the tone of someone who'd made a practical decision and expected thanks. Peace. I sank down onto the floor, my back against the crib's frame. Peace. I hadn't even buried the dream yet, and they were scrubbing it from the walls. Like my grief was a mess they needed to contain before company came. The silence around me rang louder than any siren. After a while, I got up. I opened my closet. Most of my maternity clothes were gone. Not all. Just enough that it was noticeable. 2 dresses missing. The little knit cardigan my aunt had sent me. My prenatal journal. I checked the bathroom. No folic acid, no stretch mark balm, no trace. I stumbled into the kitchen. There was a cake box on the counter, frosting smudges still clinging to the plastic window. "Welcome, baby Charlotte." Written in pink, the C smushed slightly like someone had pressed too hard. Charlotte, I felt something twist in my stomach so hard I doubled over. That was my name. The one I'd chosen, the one I whispered at night when I curled around my belly like I could shield her from the world. They took it. I don't know how long I stood there. Could have been 10 seconds. Could have been 30 minutes. But when my phone rang, I didn't even look at the screen. I just answered it, breath raw in my throat. "Danielle," my sister Lauren's voice came through, tight and rehearsed, like she'd been made to call. "Mom says you got home okay?" I didn't answer. "We just thought maybe you needed a reset, a fresh start. After everything, it was too painful to... You cleared my nursery." A pause. "You weren't using it anymore," she said, like it was obvious. "And Crystal's due any day now." The way she said Crystal's name, soft, understanding, maternal, made me feel like I was some stranger being coached into generosity. "You gave her the name," I said flatly. "We didn't know it mattered. You hadn't told anyone. You were still deciding." "I told Mom," I whispered. Another silence. Then, "Look, you've been through something traumatic. You shouldn't isolate. We want you at the brunch tomorrow. It'll be good to see everyone. Brunch. I stared at the cake box, at the note. You think I'm coming to brunch? I think, Lauren said carefully, if you want things to get better, you have to show up, not just disappear into sadness. I ended the call. That night I didn't sleep in my bed. I lay in the empty nursery, curled on the rug where the glider used to be. I didn't cry. Crying was something soft, something warm. What I felt was colder, sharper, a resolve I didn't recognize yet, but it was growing. They thought they were tidying up, resetting the stage. But they forgot something. You can't clean grief out of a place if the person still lives there. And I was very much still here. I arrived 10 minutes early, not because I wanted to, because I needed to see it before they started performing. The brunch was being held at Sage and Laurel, the upscale cafe near the Arboretum, the one with exposed brick, ceiling vines, and a full harpist on weekends. When I walked in, the hostess barely glanced at the list. Private party, I nodded. Back room, she said. They've already arrived. I moved slowly through the dining space, past clusters of glassware and couples snapping mimosa selfies. My boots were still stained with yesterday's rain. I didn't care. The back room was cordoned off with a velvet rope. Inside, they decorated the long table in pale gold and sage accents, crystal place cards, custom menus. My mother sat at the head, smiling, swirling her coffee like it was just another Sunday. Lauren was beside her, and on the far end, the seat closest to the kitchen, sat Crystal. She was radiant, of course. Long, loose waves, a blush pink maternity dress. She glowed like the centerpiece of a bridal catalog. I stepped over the rope. The sound of my boots against the hardwood made half the table turn. My mother's smile froze. Danielle, I held her stare. You invited me. Of course, she said too quickly. We weren't sure you'd come. I pulled out the empty chair beside Lauren and sat. No one spoke for a long second. Crystal gave a nervous laugh. Well, I'm glad you did, she said. We were just talking baby names. My jaw clenched. Oh, she added like it was an afterthought. I hope you don't mind that we kept Charlotte. My mother reached across the table. It's such a beautiful name, darling. It would have been a shame to waste it. Waste. My sister looked down. I didn't blink. You didn't just keep the name. My mother's fingers twitched. Danielle, you kept the name. You cleared the room. You erased every trace of what happened to me and replaced it with a version that looks better in photos. Don't be dramatic, she said with a strained smile. We were trying to help you move forward. It's what families do. Is that what this is? I asked. A family gathering? Everyone went quiet again. The server appeared with a carafe of orange juice. My father had just arrived, slipping in from the side entrance in his pressed polo like this was a golf event. He gave me a surprised nod. Good to see you out, kiddo. Didn't know I was in, I replied. He didn't answer. When the drinks were poured, my mother lifted her glass. Let's toast, she said, to new beginnings. I raised mine too, but didn't drink. Instead, I looked at Crystal. Did they tell you they were supposed to meet me at the hospital? Her hand froze halfway to her fork. They were invited, I texted, I waited while I lost everything. Danielle, my mother snapped. While I lost everything, I repeated louder. You were taking photos with cake and confetti, with her. Crystal's face paled. She opened her mouth, but I kept going. I thought you were grieving with me, I told my family. Turns out you were celebrating her. My sister pushed her chair back. This isn't helping. No, Lauren, it's clarifying. I stood up, every part of me trembling but steady. I won't make a scene. I won't scream, but don't ask me to come here and smile while you repurpose my grief like it's a color palette. I placed the untouched menu back on the table. And don't ever call me dramatic again, I added. You're the ones rewriting history. Then I walked out, past the brunch crowd, past the hostess, into sunlight so sharp it stung my eyes, but at least it was honest. I didn't go home after the brunch. I couldn't. The walls there still echoed with everything I hadn't said, everything I had tried to cradle until it disappeared. I needed a room where no one expected me to smile, forgive, or be grateful. So I went to someone who used to see me before everything fell apart. Dr. Kaylee Chen's office hadn't changed. Still tucked in a cozy corner of the wellness center near Middleton Square, 3rd floor, suite with the dusty ficus in the hallway. The front desk girl gave me a soft look when I walked in, like she recognized something in my face she wasn't supposed to name. She's finishing up, she whispered. You can go in after. I waited, not on the couch, but standing, near the window that overlooked the commuter rail line. People down there looked like ants, tiny, determined, going somewhere that mattered. Eventually, the door creaked open. Dr. Chen's voice, calm and even. Danielle? I followed her in. The office smelled like mint tea and old leather chairs. Same bookshelves, same worn rug, same silver clock that ticked just slowly enough to make you doubt your thoughts. She sat across from me and waited. I didn't speak for nearly a minute. Then I said, I didn't come for a session. She nodded. Then why are you here? I needed to remember who I was before. She didn't ask before what. She was smarter than that. Instead, she tilted her head. You kept journals from last year. Do you want them? I stared. You still have those? You gave permission to hold them. You said you'd come back when you were ready. Something inside me shifted. I need them now. She stood, walked to a small cabinet behind her desk, and pulled out a sealed folder. Not thick, not thin either. Labeled in my handwriting, Demon Row, Archive. She handed it to me. I didn't open it there. I nodded my thanks, left, and went straight to the sculpture garden behind the Civic Museum, one of the few places in town where you could sit alone in public and not feel watched. I picked a bench between two twisted bronze structures and unsealed the folder. The first few pages were drawings. Not skillful, just memories, little flashes of images I couldn't find words for last year. A ceiling light, the outline of a crib, a pair of hands. Then came the entries. One by one, they built a portrait I had tried to forget. Not just of what was happening, but what was being said around me. To me, about me, my mother's voice in quotes. Try not to dwell, you don't want to drive people away. Lauren. People can feel energy, Danielle. Yours is hard to be around lately. Josh. We can't pretend like this isn't hard for everyone, not just you. Each line was sharper now, read with new eyes. Not grief, not love, control, framing, cleanup. At the back of the folder was something I didn't remember writing. A list. Charlotte, week 14. White sweater, mom's closet. Lauren's ultrasound, 3 weeks after mine. Mom, just act happy. It helps her. My throat closed, the white sweater. I'd worn it the night I told them, the ultrasound dates, my sister's, 3 weeks later. Same clinic, same calendar page. I flipped back, suddenly frantic. Had I known something? No, but something had known me. I stared at the names, the timing, the lines that now read more like warnings than memories. I sat back, and for the first time, I didn't feel lost. I felt like I was being followed by a pattern, and I was ready to start tracing it. The clinic looked exactly the same. Beige siding, chipped flower beds, and that fake wood paneling across the entry doors that always reminded me of waiting rooms from the 90s. But walking in now felt like entering a different world entirely. I wasn't a patient anymore. I wasn't scared. I was looking for something. The receptionist barely looked up. Check in? I shook my head. I'm not here for an appointment. I just need to access my file. From February, Danielle Monroe. She clicked her pen, slow and deliberate. Are you requesting a copy for personal use or transfer? Personal. She gestured toward a clipboard. Fill this. The form was long, with blocks for ID numbers, doctor initials, and authorization notes. I filled it out, handed it back. She didn't smile, just walked to the back without a word. 10 minutes passed, then 15. I glanced at the wall clock, still ticking, still indifferent. Finally, a tall man in a gray coat emerged from the hallway. He introduced himself as Dr. Clements, not the one who had seen me originally. That doctor, apparently, was on sabbatical. We're having trouble locating your chart, he said. I frowned. What do you mean? Well, we have a scanned intake from January, but the sonograms, the discharge notes, none of it's indexed under your name. I stared at him. I was admitted through ER. You had my labs, my ultrasound. You confirmed the loss. He nodded slowly, awkward now. I believe you, but without a full chart, we can't verify the sequence of care unless we locate the original paperwork. Sometimes files are misfiled under similar patients. If you have any alternate names, I don't. Anyone else listed under your insurance? My parents. The words left my mouth before I could stop them. Dr. Clements blinked. Well, that could explain it. If your parents were listed as financial custodians, it's possible records were consolidated under the primary. I leaned forward. And who would that be? He checked the screen, his jaw tensed. I can't disclose that unless you're listed as the access holder. I'm the patient. He hesitated. Technically, yes, but the billing account was updated mid-February. It was reassigned. To who? He didn't answer, but the silence told me everything. I stood up. Thank you for your time, doctor. Miss Monroe, if something was mishandled, you can submit a formal, I'm not filing anything, not yet. I walked out before he could follow. Outside, the air was thick and stale, the kind that sits in your lungs like wet cloth. I pulled my phone out and opened my photo folder. I'd taken pictures of everything back then. I was compulsive like that. Ultrasound prints, appointment cards, the whiteboard on the door. One photo stopped me. It was blurry, snapped mid-step, but in the corner, a whiteboard note was visible. Monroe D, 11:45 consult. Next, L. Monroe, 12:10 check-in. Lauren, same day, back-to-back slots. My stomach turned. I sat on the curb, elbows on my knees, heart pounding. Not just from what I saw, but from what I didn't want to ask yet. What was she doing here that day? Why had no one told me? I stared at the photo, fingers trembling. The timeline was tighter than I'd realized. My loss didn't happen in a vacuum. And now, I wasn't even sure it happened alone. Meriton Ridge was the kind of neighborhood where every mailbox had brass numbers and every porch had a seasonal wreath. I hadn't driven up this street since before the baby shower photos. Lauren's new house sat at the corner lot, a pale gray colonial with fresh shutters and a leased white SUV in the drive. I parked 3 houses down, not out of fear, out of strategy. I needed to see her before she saw me. There were lights on inside. A shadow passed behind the front window. Her, probably, pacing with a phone in hand, orchestrating something. Always busy, always rehearsed. I rang the doorbell once. It took less than 10 seconds for her to open the door. She looked surprised, but not speechless. Danielle? Hi, she didn't move. Did Mom call you? No, you did. 3 months ago. You told me to show up if I wanted things to get better. She crossed her arms. And now you're here? Now I want answers. Lauren stepped back just enough to let me in. The foyer was still half finished, blank walls, renovation tape. The smell of fresh paint lingered. Everything else was showroom perfect. She led me to the kitchen island and poured herself a glass of water. I'm assuming this is about the brunch. No, I said. It's about February 12th. Her hand paused halfway to her mouth. You were at the clinic, I continued. I have a photo with both our names on the whiteboard. Same day, same doctor. Lauren didn't speak. Why? She set the glass down. I was getting routine tests. At the exact same time I was being admitted for a miscarriage? You're not the only one with appointments, Danielle. No, I said, but I was the only one whose chart disappeared. Silence. Did you know they reassigned my medical file? That they scrubbed my records and rerouted billing through someone else's account? She didn't flinch, but she didn't deny it. Why would they do that, Lauren? Her eyes flicked toward the hallway. This isn't the place for this conversation. This is exactly the place. It's your kitchen. It's where you called me dramatic while eating cake with my baby's name on it. Lauren looked away. You had your ultrasound the same day I lost mine, I said. Still nothing. It wasn't just about Crystal, was it? That landed, her jaw clenched. You don't know what you're saying. I think I do, I said, stepping closer. I think something happened that day that no one wants me to piece together. And I think Mom and Dad helped cover it because they didn't want a scandal. She lowered her voice. Don't you dare come into my home and throw around that word. I'm not throwing it. I'm digging for it. Lauren's composure cracked. You lost something, Danielle. We all felt it. But that doesn't give you the right to tear apart the rest of us just to find someone to blame. I'm not looking for blame. I'm looking for truth. She exhaled, short and sharp. There's nothing more to say, she said quietly. You should go. I didn't move. You don't want to know everything, she added. Trust me. I looked her dead in the eyes. I used to believe that. Now I don't believe anything until I see it for myself. I turned to leave, my fingers curled into fists. She didn't call after me. But just before the door shut, I heard her whisper, so faint I almost missed it. You weren't supposed to be there that day. The drive to the vineyard took just under an hour, long enough to question myself, not long enough to stop. Chapelstone Hills looked just as pretentious as I remembered. Rows of ornamental olive trees, white gravel roundabout, a wooden entrance sign carved with the family name, Monroe Vine Estate. My parents had bought it in their second act years, claiming they wanted to invest in something meaningful. They gave speeches about legacy. Harvest, a place the family can always come home to. They meant everyone but me. The parking lot was mostly empty. It was Monday, off hours. I found my way past the tasting patio and through the back gate toward the office barn where they did admin work. It wasn't locked. Inside smelled like cork dust and floor polish. The air was thick with old humidity and overoiled wood. There was a long desk, filing cabinets, a pinboard covered in vendor receipts and wine club rosters. No one noticed me, or maybe no one cared. I closed the barn door behind me and stepped toward the filing drawer labeled 2024 Clinic Payroll Contracts. Clinic. I pulled the drawer open, flipped through the folders, then I saw it, a slim blue folder labeled Lauren Febby Maternity Comp. My throat tightened. I slid it out. Inside were printed invoices, logistics, private services, a line item for external transport, another for priority billing correction, expedited, and at the bottom, a name, Danielle Monroe, redirection authorized, authorization, R. Monroe Mom. She hadn't just known, she had signed it. I stared at the signature like it might blink. Footsteps behind me. I turned. Dad stood in the doorway holding a box of vineyard brochures. His face barely flickered. Didn't think you'd come back here. I needed paperwork, I said, not bothering to hide the folder. You should have asked. You would have said no. He closed the door behind him with his elbow. Set the box down. That wasn't supposed to reach you. Yeah, I said. Seems like a pattern. We stood in silence, the kind of silence you sharpen before use. You don't understand the pressure your mother was under, he said finally. No, I replied, because she never told me the truth. He looked down. It wasn't meant to hurt you. Then why does it feel like it's killing me? He didn't answer. I held up the folder. This isn't just messy, it's a cover-up. He looked me in the eyes for the first time since I walked in. We were trying to contain fallout, that's all. Fallout from what? He exhaled. From your sister's mistake. That did it. Mistake? I asked. What mistake? He stepped back. Ask her. I did. She said I wasn't supposed to be there. He rubbed his jaw. That's true. Something clicked. You knew I had an appointment. He nodded. You sent me anyway. Another pause. You were supposed to reschedule, but you didn't check your messages. I froze. I hadn't. That week was chaos. I'd missed a voicemail. You sent me there knowing Lauren would be there. We didn't think it would overlap. And when it did? He didn't answer. You didn't come to the hospital because you were with her. Silence again. I shoved the folder into my bag. I'm done asking permission, I said. From now on, I find everything myself. I walked out of the office, and for the first time in weeks, the silence didn't scare me. Because I wasn't carrying grief anymore. I was carrying evidence. I didn't drive home. I sat in the vineyard's upper grove beneath the shade of a weather-worn pergola. The hill overlooked rows of dormant vines and the narrow maintenance road that snaked through the fields. And at the edge of it all, where gravel met fence, sat the old groundskeeper's bench. I hadn't seen him in over a year. He used to work for us before the tasting room expansion, silent, sharp-eyed, always pretending not to listen when voices rose on the patio. Mr. Albee, real name Alvin Kress. My parents paid him under the table, said he liked staying off the grid, but he noticed things. And he never liked Lauren. I texted the only number I had saved from a vendor receipt last year, the one he used for harvest payroll confirmation. It's Danielle, need 5 minutes, vineyard bench. 15 minutes passed, then 20, I thought maybe he wouldn't come. Then I saw him, faded denim jacket, orange work gloves shoved in his back pocket, same cautious gait, same squint like sunlight always betrayed him. He didn't sit. Didn't expect you here, he said. I didn't expect the last 6 months either. He looked out over the field. You want to ask something? I ain't got long. I pulled the folder from my bag. February, clinic file, my name was removed, my sister's name added, my mother signed off. He didn't flinch. I need to know who else knew, who was there. You think I keep track of doctors? No, but you kept track of what my family does behind closed doors. That got him. He glanced at the folder, then he sighed. I wasn't supposed to be at the estate that day. Your dad told me to take off. But you didn't? He smirked. Vines don't water themselves? I leaned forward. What did you see? He took a long breath. Black sedan pulled up midday. Crystal got out first, then Lauren. I blinked. Crystal was there too? Not long. She didn't go inside, looked nervous. Your mother came out, took Lauren in through the back. I tried to process that. They all met here before the appointment? Hour before, he said. I saw your father pacing the cellar dock, talking with a man in scrubs. Clinic logo, no name tag. I grabbed my bag tighter. Albie reached into his jacket, pulled out a stained envelope. I didn't know what it meant, but I saved this. Inside was a printed delivery receipt, dated 2 days before my appointment. Item: pre-admission review packet. Recipient: Monroe Estate. Signed by R. Monroe. Why would pre-admission forms for a clinic show up at my parents' vineyard? I asked, voice cracking. He looked at me. Because someone wanted the story clean before it even started. I stared at the paper. Why are you giving me this now? Because last time I tried to tell someone, they fired me, said I breached family confidentiality, but you're not them anymore. I stood slowly. No, I'm not. He watched me pack the folder, the envelope, the photo. You going to burn it down? He asked, not unkindly. No, I said. I'm going to make sure the right person sees it burn. He gave a short nod. As he walked away, I noticed something under the bench, half buried in the gravel. A teething ring, pink, faded but intact. Someone had brought a baby here. Recently. My blood ran cold, because it wasn't Crystal's child. She hadn't delivered yet, and suddenly I knew exactly where I was going next. I hadn't seen the guest house since before they remodeled it last summer. They'd called it the cottage in family texts, like some cozy neutral space meant for wine weekends and retirees. But I remembered the original build. Plain, boxy, detached from the vineyard house by a gravel path and a row of pines tall enough to hide secrets. It was locked, of course, but the back window was cracked. They never replaced the warped frame from last year's storm. I pushed it open with the edge of a gardening trowel I found under the tool rack and climbed through into the dark. No alarms, no motion lights, just silence and the faint hum of HVAC. The space smelled like baby powder. I stood in the kitchen, motionless, then I saw it, light bleeding under the door at the end of the hall, a soft, low glow. Not white, pink. I walked slowly. One step, then another. When I pushed the door open, I didn't feel rage. I felt suspended, like my brain had stopped firing in sequence, because the room was identical to mine. The nursery I built, same mobile, same wallpaper print. Even the same rocker, reupholstered, but I knew the curve of that frame like I knew my own silhouette. On the far wall hung a photo collage, family pictures with a baby I'd never seen. A baby with my eyes. I staggered forward. Her name was stitched into the quilt draped across the crib rail. Charlotte. Not Crystal's baby, not adopted. Alive, here, breathing. My knees buckled. I grabbed the dresser for balance, and that's when I heard the door creak behind me. I spun. It was Lauren. She looked like she hadn't slept in days. We stared at each other, mirror images caught in opposite sides of a lie. You weren't supposed to find this, she whispered. I couldn't speak. She stepped into the nursery and gently closed the door behind her. She was never Crystal's, she said. My voice cracked. Then whose? Silence. Then, mine. I froze. What are you talking about? Lauren's mouth trembled. I wasn't supposed to keep her. Mom had made arrangements. After everything that happened, they told me it was better that way, cleaner. I backed away. No, I was the one who... I know, she interrupted, tears rising now. But the clinic, the way it happened, they switched the rooms. Mom said it was too late to explain, too many people involved, so they told everyone I was the one who... She broke off. And you just went along with it? I choked. She nodded. They said you wouldn't make it through, that you'd lost too much, that it would kill you. It did, I snapped. It did kill me. Her voice broke. I'm sorry, I tried to tell them I wanted to, but they said it would destroy everything. I looked at the crib again, the tiny hands, the soft breaths, the quilt that carried my stolen love stitched into cotton. You could have given her back, I whispered. Lauren sobbed. I didn't know how. My body was still, my mind was a wildfire. Then I stepped forward and I picked up my daughter. She didn't cry. She looked up at me like she already knew my scent. Like she remembered. Like she'd been waiting. I walked into the vineyard tasting room carrying Charlotte against my chest. wrapped in the old white blanket from her original nursery, the one they claimed had gone missing during cleaning. Her head nestled beneath my chin, her breath steady. My hands shook, but not from fear. This time, I knew exactly what I was doing. Mom sat at her usual table in the center of the room, arranging a flight of Pinot samples with her favorite sommelier. Polished, perfect, performing as always. When she saw me, her fingers paused mid-stem. Then she stood, slowly. Danielle, her voice dropped an octave. I kept walking until I stood directly across from her. No greetings, no pleasantries, just the weight of everything that had been stolen. I unfastened the sling and let Charlotte's face show. My mother's jaw locked. Her eyes darted to the sommelier, who wisely took the entire tray and disappeared behind the bar. "Where did you get her?" she asked tightly. "You mean where did I find my daughter?" Her lips twitched. "Danielle, please not here?" "Why not? Too public, too real?" She stepped forward. "You need to understand." "No," I cut her off. "You need to listen." I placed the folder and envelope on the table. "I have the clinic logs, I have the groundskeeper's testimony, I have the authorization form you signed redirecting my medical files to Lauren's name." Her face drained of color. "And I have a quilt with a stolen name on it, my name, sewn by your hands." "You weren't well," she said quietly. "You were spiraling. We were afraid." "You weren't afraid for me," I snapped. "You were afraid of the mess I'd cause, of the image, of the story you couldn't control." She closed her eyes. "You weren't supposed to come back from that." There it was, the truth in its ugliest dress. "I did," I said, my voice shaking. "I came back, and now I know everything." She looked at Charlotte. "She's bonded with Lauren. She won't remember you." "She will," I said, "because I never stopped remembering her." "You don't have custody." "I don't need it yet, not when I have truth. And the moment I show this to the right people, none of your documents, none of your connections, none of your donations will matter." She straightened. "You'll destroy this family." I laughed once, short and sharp. "This family destroyed itself. I'm just pulling back the curtain." Charlotte stirred in my arms. I rocked gently. "She deserves to know who her mother is," I said. "Not the version you replaced me with, the real one." "She'll never have the life you dreamed of," Mom said coldly. "Not now." "No," I agreed, "but she'll have the truth and love, and that's more than you ever gave me." I turned and walked toward the door. Her voice followed. "You walk out with her now, you walk away from us forever." I paused at the threshold. "You made that choice for me a long time ago," I said. "I'm just finally walking in the direction you shoved me." Then I left. Charlotte still sleeping, my heart wide awake. The lawyer's office was in a converted brownstone on Holcomb Street. Clean, quiet, and nothing like the chaos boiling inside me. I sat across from Maya Landon, a family litigation attorney who didn't flinch when I used words like fraud, misattribution, and custodial deceit. She didn't ask if I was sure. She asked for documents, timelines, and verification sources. I gave her the file folder, the photos, the envelope from Albie. I told her about Lauren's confession, my mother's signature, the rerouting of my medical care, the deliberate redirection of an entire identity. And then I told her about Charlotte. When I finished, Maya leaned back and tapped a pen against her notepad. "You've got a case," she said. "And not just a family one. This touches medical ethics, impersonation, even falsified guardianship if what you're saying holds." "It holds," I said. "I have her. I have the birth records. They just used Lauren's name to front it all." Maya nodded. "We'll need testimony, someone who was present, someone besides family." I hesitated. "There was a man," I said, "groundskeeper, Albie. He saw them at the vineyard, has documentation." "Good. Anyone else?" I hesitated again. "Crystal," I said finally. "She was there the day Lauren met with Mom at the vineyard. She looked uncomfortable, like she didn't want to be involved." Maya scribbled. "Will she talk?" "I don't know. I can find out." She stood, crossed the room, and opened a locked cabinet. Inside was a thick legal binder labeled Review Affidavits, Potential. She flipped to the back, pulled out a page. "I already started outreach," she said. "Before you even arrived, I contacted a colleague who flagged an anomaly from a whistleblower complaint filed last quarter." I frowned. "Complaint?" She slid the paper across the desk. It was a statement, anonymous, but signed internally by someone employed at the clinic, a nurse. The first line stopped my breath. On February 12th, I was present during the reassignment of patient records at the request of a private third party. I objected. I was told to stay quiet. My fingers trembled as I read. Maya's voice softened. She came forward after seeing a social post about the Monroe Vineyard donation. She recognized the name, said it matched what she'd been forced to ignore. I looked up. She's willing to testify? She just added her name this morning. You'll want to read the rest of it in private. I nodded, but inside a pulse had shifted. This wasn't a ghost chase anymore. It wasn't just memory or grief or fury. It was real, tied, documented, witnessed by a system that was about to implode under its own rot. As I left the office, Charlotte blinked up at me from her carrier. Outside, the air was crisp, clear, unapologetic. We walked toward the courthouse together. And for the first time since this nightmare began, I wasn't dragging myself through smoke. I was walking into fire, by choice. Court was set in the annex wing of the Municipal Center, a sterile beige room with tall windows and pew-like benches. The kind of room designed to shrink truth into forms and procedure. I sat at the plaintiff's table, Maya beside me, our folders stacked like shields. Charlotte wasn't in the building, safe instead with a court-approved guardian while proceedings remained closed, but I could feel her presence in every breath I took. Lauren was seated across from me, composed, a gray blazer, no makeup. Our parents weren't beside her. They sat in the row behind, flanked by two family attorneys like political advisors bracing for fallout. The judge entered. Formalities passed like static, and then it began. Maya rose and presented the complaint. Medical fraud, custodial misrepresentation, obstruction of patient rights, and postnatal identity concealment. The courtroom didn't breathe. She laid out the evidence one piece at a time. The false reassignment form, the missing clinic chart, the teething ring from the guest house, the quilt. Each item landed like a dropped stone in a shallow pond. Rippled reactions, widened eyes. Lauren's attorney objected, claimed emotional speculation. The judge waved it off. Let her continue. Then Maya called the first witness, Albie. He walked to the stand with slow, deliberate steps, wore a navy work shirt, said nothing until asked, and when he spoke, he burned the silence. He described the meeting at the vineyard, the man in scrubs, the boxes of paperwork, the voices tense, panicked, rehearsed. Then he paused. There was a baby carrier, he said. Lauren's head whipped up. Excuse me? Her attorney barked. Albie didn't flinch. 2 months after the switch, I was back to clear a path from the vineyard to the guest house. Your father told me to stay out of the back rooms, but I saw inside. The judge leaned in. What did you see? Albie's voice didn't shake. A woman feeding a baby. The baby had Danielle's eyes. Gasps, movement in the gallery. My parents both stiffened. My mother whispered something sharp, but it was too late. Then Maya stood again. I'd like to call our next witness, she said. The whistleblower nurse? There was a shuffle behind the door, and then she walked in. Not in uniform, in a simple green sweater, late 30s, hair pulled back, she stepped to the stand, and before the judge could even begin, she spoke. My name is Elise Kendrick, she said. I was the admitting nurse on February 12th. The courtroom froze. I was ordered to assign a patient file to the wrong person. I resisted. The order came from a non-medical third party. Objection, Lauren's lawyer shouted. Speculation. Elise raised her hand. I have recordings. The room shifted, real fast. Maya turned to the judge. We request a closed evidentiary review immediately. Granted, he said, barely above a whisper. But it didn't matter, because everyone in that room now knew this wasn't just family. This was fraud, organized, executed, unraveling. And Lauren knew it too. She didn't look at me. But I saw her lips move. I didn't want this. Neither did I, but here we were. The courthouse hallway felt colder after the verdict adjourned for recess. Technically, we hadn't reached final judgment, but the damage was done. The courtroom had heard enough. The judge called for overnight deliberation. Maya whispered that it was a good sign. Sometimes silence means the other side's thinking of settling. But I wasn't thinking about legal terms. I was thinking about Lauren. She hadn't spoken during recess, hadn't cried, hadn't denied. Just sat there, white-knuckled, while Elise laid bare every medical manipulation she had been party to or complicit in by silence. Now she was waiting for me. Not in a hallway, not outside court, but in the garage level, alone, standing beside a concrete pillar like she had nowhere else left to go. I almost walked past her, Almost. But something in the way she held her arms, crossed, pressed tight like armor, stopped me. You have 5 minutes, I said. She nodded. I didn't ask for this, she whispered. You said that already, I replied, inside the courtroom, where it meant nothing. I know. She looked at the floor. Not her usual deflection, something smaller, more broken. They were supposed to take care of it, she said. Mom told me she'd handle the paperwork. Dad said it'd be better for everyone if we just folded things neatly. My chest burned. You folded my daughter into your nursery. She wasn't your daughter anymore, Lauren said. Not then, that's what they told me. My voice cracked. And you believed them? I had to, she said. I couldn't imagine the alternative. There was no alternative, I snapped. There was a theft, a name erased. Lauren stepped closer. I loved her. You don't think I cried every night? No, I said, because I didn't hear you cry. I heard you celebrate. At brunch, at tastings, you raised toasts over a child who was never yours to claim. She flinched, then she pulled something from her purse. A photo. I recognized the frame. It was the same one from the nursery wall. But the picture inside was different. It wasn't Charlotte. It was me, 8 months pregnant, sleeping in a hospital bed, tubes in my arm, eyes closed, alone. I took this, Lauren said, the night it happened, when they told me what they told me. I stared at the image. I didn't remember that moment, because I was unconscious. They said you wouldn't wake up, she continued, that you wouldn't make it, she swallowed. They said the baby had no chance of survival unless they acted fast, that a full transfer of care would keep the name intact. Under me, I choked. And you said yes. I said nothing. I just signed where they told me. She looked up at me. I'm not asking for forgiveness, she said. But I want you to know, before all of this explodes, I never wanted her to forget you. You erased me, I said. No, she said softly. I kept her name, Danielle. Middle name, they didn't know. I made that choice alone. For a second, the concrete ceiling flickered. I blinked back the wave that nearly cracked me in two. But I didn't thank her. Not yet. Instead, I took the photo and walked away. Because what came next wasn't about memory. It was about justice. The courtroom was packed tighter than ever. Word had spread, not just about the fraud or the child or the falsified files, but about us. A family name once whispered with admiration, now dissected in public record. Monroe, the vineyard, the brunches, all of it peeled open like overripe fruit. I sat in the same seat, Maya beside me, a silence between us, taut but warm. Across the aisle, my mother wore black. Not mourning attire, defensive, cold, calculated. Dad sat with his hands clasped tight. Lauren's seat was empty. She'd chosen not to attend final ruling. The judge entered, papers shuffled. Everyone stood, then sat. The voice that followed was calm, but the impact was immediate. After review of all testimonial evidence, documents submitted, and witness statements under oath, this court finds grounds for custodial restitution in favor of Danielle Monroe. I didn't hear the rest, because Maya reached over and touched my hand. It was done. Charlotte would remain with me, legally, fully, without interference. And the court would pursue separate charges for medical fraud and identity tampering against all involved parties, including my parents, including the clinic. The room didn't erupt. It cracked, subtle, stunned disbelief moving like a wave. You could hear people swallowing, adjusting in their seats. No shouts, no applause, just release. Then the judge looked at me. Would you like to make a statement before adjournment? I stood, walked to the front. My heart beat inside my throat, but I spoke clearly, slowly. There are things a daughter should never have to prove, I began, like whether her child is hers, or whether her pain counts, or whether her voice belongs in her own family. My eyes scanned the room. I met my mother's gaze, then dropped it. For months, I let silence cover what I knew was wrong. I let grief keep me obedient, until I realized the only way out wasn't through forgiveness. I took a breath. It was through truth. A murmur in the gallery. I went on. My daughter was not a complication. She wasn't a clerical error. She wasn't property to be reassigned because someone else had cleaner timing. I turned slightly, looked toward the back row where Charlotte's guardian sat holding her in a soft gray blanket. She was mine, I said, voice cracking. She is mine. I paused. And today, finally, she knows it too. Then I looked back at the judge. I don't speak today to punish, I speak so this can never happen to anyone else. I stepped down. Silence followed me to my seat. The judge nodded once, then stood. Court is adjourned. The gavel fell. But in my heart, something rose. Maya whispered, "You did it." I shook my head. "We did it." And Charlotte, waiting in the doorway, smiled, not a baby smile, a daughter's. I returned to the vineyard at dawn. No cars, no guests, just silence and fog curling around the grape rows like memory itself had breath. Charlotte was with Maya's assistant for the morning, safe, fed, warm. She'd never see this part. That was the point. I parked by the old barn, same rusted hinges, same dusty smell. But something felt different now, smaller. I walked the path past the pergola where Albie once sat, past the guest house with its shades drawn and shutters bowed, past the hill that used to host family portraits and birthday toasts, now just empty vines. At the edge of the property stood a wooden post. It used to hold the Monroe Vineyard harvest bell, a symbol of tradition, pride. I carried it in my arms. The bell, taken down after the first hearing. I wasn't here to ring it, I was here to leave it. I knelt beside the post, dug the base into the earth, and stood the bell upright, but I didn't strike it. Instead, I tied something around it. Charlotte's first hospital bracelet, the one they had pretended didn't exist. I looped it once, tied it off, and stepped back, not far, just enough to see. The sun rose behind it like a final witness. This wasn't revenge. This was a reckoning, and I was done carrying their silence. The papers had already been signed. The vineyard was being sold, every asset split and seized for reparations. My parents hadn't spoken to me since the verdict. Lauren sent a letter I hadn't opened yet. Maybe one day I would, but not today. Today was for endings and beginnings. I took one last walk through the central rows, where I'd once run during harvests as a child, barefoot and sticky with grape juice, where laughter used to live, where truth had been buried. Then finally, I turned back and walked away. No dramatic burn, no fire, just the echo of everything they tried to erase, still standing, because I was still standing. And so was my daughter. We were not a mistake. We were never a footnote. We were the whole story.